Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Businessology Show. We've been doing this show for so long, you already know our firm, Blummer CPA, sponsors the show. And that's because we work with amazing clients, agency owners, creative people who know how to actually build businesses. So we bring people on that help us know how to do this kind of work. And I got a super interesting guest today. It's going to be a lot of fun. He is a keynote speaker and he does this for a living. We're going to figure out, how do you do that? And he's produced at the NBC show Muppets in New York, Charles Kuralt, which is pretty cool. And he's been in all kind of publications, New York Times, Forbes, Wall Street Journal, NBC, travels all over the world. Andrew Davis has even crafted documentaries, award-winning things for Fortune 500 brands. Andrew, you do all kind of stuff. Welcome to the Businessology Show, man.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
We got applause.
Thanks for sponsoring Businessology for 11 years too. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. And here's the funny thing. We're going to talk about this in a minute, but you're using the same audio platform that we're using in our studio. So you have some really cool toys that we're going to actually see in a minute, right? You're good to show those, right?
Sure. Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So when it's time, I'm gonna wanna dive into that stuff. You just played applause, which is super cool. I'm like fussing at the studio here, going, "Where's my applause? I didn't know I had an applause button." So it's gonna be cool. All right, let's dive in. Thank you for coming to the show. This is gonna be fun. We're gonna learn a lot together. Well, the guests are, and I'm gonna probably learn a lot too. Now, Andrew, you're a client of ours, which is super exciting. So we're pumped to have you. But I'm curious about producing at the Today Show and Muppets, and how you went from that to then leading your own digital agency. We're going to just get a little bit of your story in here.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, so I started in the television business. I worked in local television. I was, producing like a weekly medical call-in show. Actually, at the time, it was the highest rated medical call-in show on the air in the United States. Yes, it was also the only one, but it was the highest rated one. But it was a great experience. And then, I ended up doing a bunch of producing freelance. And then I worked at the Today Show, like writing essentially segments for them. I wrote for Charles Kuralt, which was an amazing experience. And I worked on his last show called An American Moment. And I bet even the younger listeners and viewers don't know who Charles Kuralt is, but probably not. It was a formative experience. He's just a masterful storyteller. And then this is the late 90s. So a lot of you will remember the internet boom of the late 90s. And, I was making no money, living in Manhattan, working in television. And all of a sudden, my friends started getting cooler jobs in the internet world. They were making more money. And I was like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "We don't really know. We work in television, telling stories, and now we work in marketing, telling stories." So I got a job at a startup in Boston. Actually, I moved from New York to Boston and worked at a startup in marketing. And then I started my own agency after the startup I went to got sold, and then another startup I went to they actually fired me. And I thought, you know what, I can do marketing better than these folks. So it was pretty arrogant and youthful exuberance, I guess, was at play. So I started an agency with my friend of mine who was actually a journalist that I met at that first local television job, and we started a marketing agency and grew it until 2012, and then sold it. So
wow.
So I got that's how I ended up getting into marketing. Yeah, that's the short version.
Okay. Well, it's cool. Our journeys do teach us so much. I had a similar story when I was working at a larger firm, CPA firm, and I was creative, trying all kind of things. And I did tell them, "I'm out of here. I can do this way better than y'all." And that was what did you call that? Youthful exuberance?
Yeah, I think it's youthful exuberance.
Okay.
It's, you know what? I actually,
not asinine stupidity.
Well, I thought about writing a book at one point called Too Stupid to Know Any Better. And it's about the power of naivete. Like when you don't know how hard it is to run an agency, man, it seems pretty easy. And ironically, when you don't know how everybody else runs an agency, right? If you just do it your way, sometimes that's better than everybody else's way.
Yeah.
So it's I think there's a real power there.
Well, that's funny. Yeah, that's the book I'm supposed to write too, apparently. But it's weird. We coach and lead people, these entrepreneurs who are trying to grow businesses, and a lot of times they start out with, listen, this is my first time running an agency. I don't really know what I'm doing, and I'm like, well, you're killing it. So I think that's working. So thank goodness you were not, corroded by the last agency you worked for that thought they knew what they were doing where they didn't. So there's a great point in naivete, really, in running a business. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. When we sold our first client, it was a huge mutual fund company, and I remember this was before we had the internet on smartphones. We just had cell phones, and they asked us at the end of the meeting, hey, how do you guys like to work? Do you like to work on a retainer? Or are you project basis? And we hadn't even thought that far. Like, we had no idea. So Jim, my business partner, was like, you know what? We got to run. We have another meeting, but you know what? We're going to send you a follow-up with all that. And we got back to the car, and because he was a journalist, he had a dictionary in his trunk. This is no joke. So he got the dictionary out and looked up what a retainer was. I was like, yes, we want retainers.
Dude, okay, I'm done. He had a dictionary, and it's located in his trunk with the other dead bodies, maybe.
Yes. Well,
that's hilarious.
What else was in there? He had Spam. We lived in Boston at the time, so he had Spam in the back in case he ever got stuck in a snowstorm. He was a very prepared guy. I mean, he still is.
Dude, this is not what I expected. That is very funny. So he looked up the word retainer. He's like, we want a lot of those, I think. Those sound good.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah, so we went back and crafted an email now that we knew what the definition of a retainer was, and they said, sure, that sounds great. We were like, wow, this is an amazing business.
And then you're like, we are gonna print money in this business. Like,
yes, exactly.
We just figured out what the word retainer means. They bought it. We totally snowed them. And then you're like, we just need a bunch of, about 50 more dummies, and then we've got 50 retainers.
That's right. With every client, we had to look up new words in the dictionary. I'm telling you, it was pretty amazing.
That's so funny. Well, how did you get to the Muppets? Now, I know you were at the Today Show, right? And did you just wrote for the Muppets? Was it the skits they were doing, or?
No, I actually didn't write for them. So working at the Muppets was my dream job, and I actually got that job. I was working in Boston at the time at a video production company. But my dream job was to work at the Muppets. So I started writing a letter every month, and I would FedEx it, a handwritten letter, to the head of creative at the Jim Henson Company at the time. And then he actually retired. And so when he retired, I heard through the grapevine he was retiring. So I started writing to another executive, a guy named Peter Van Roden. And Peter Van Roden called me one day and he said, look, I appreciate the letters you're sending. It's very nice, but you should stop sending them because we don't have any job openings. And I know it's costing you a lot of money to FedEx this stuff. And I was like, Peter, I will definitely stop FedExing these if you just give me a 30-minute meeting. And he was like, all right, if you're here on Monday at 10 a.m., I'll do it. So I got on a bus. I went to New York. I changed in the hotel in Times Square, and then I walked up to the Jim Henson Company offices. And that half-hour interview turned into an hour discussion. And at the end of it, he offered me a job as the production manager for the workshop, which is where they made the puppets. So my job was basically wrangling Muppets all day long and the budgets for films. And it wasn't the most glamorous job, to be totally honest. But that's how I got the job, and that's how I ended up there.
Okay.
And the best part of that job, by the way, is that's where I met Elizabeth, my wife.
Okay.
We both worked there.
Oh, okay. Was she making the puppets?
No, she was in charge. So I was in charge of the actual puppet, and she was in charge of the Muppeteer, they call him. That's the Muppet, the person that does the voice and the hands.
Yeah.
Yes. And so we used to have to, talk a lot. And she ended up, we worked in actually different offices just a few blocks away. And so, we ended up meeting there and dating. And actually, it's a very funny kind of romance story. Miss Piggy was involved, and it was good.
Dude, this is getting better. This show is getting better and better. And I don't know if you're totally lying to me or not, which makes you good at what you do.
This is 100% true.
100% true, they say.
I can do only one Muppet imitation. You ready? This will work really well for the people that are listening, not watching. But here we go. This is Grover from Sesame Street. Here we go. Ready?
All right.
Near, far, Near? Far.
This.
Okay. Anyway.
No one has ever in 11 years done impersonations on the Businessology Show.
There's a first for everything.
Well, it sounds like, Andrew, there's a lot of firsts in your life. You do a lot of firsts, I think, which is amazing. Now, Charles Kuralt where was he when you worked for him between the Today Show, Muppets? Where was he in your journey?
No, that was basically like right after working in local television. I was working at a video production studio. This is the mid '90s, and he was working on a show called An American Moment.
Okay.
You know what, though? A lot of people don't know who Charles Kuralt is, but he was a masterful storyteller.
Yeah.
I mean, just phenomenal. He wrote some great books, and he had a segment called On the Road with Charles Kuralt, and he started CBS Sunday Morning. So if you like CBS Sunday Morning, he started that show.
That's so cool.
Anyway, he was working on a show called An American Moment, which would end up being the last show he did before he died. But he's, what I learned from working with Charles Kuralt was he's a meticulous storyteller in the sense that, you kind of part of the job is pitching him an idea, right? So, hey, we want to do stories about American moments and cities and people. So what I really learned was you've got to be able to craft a good story in just a few sentences so that you're able to see the curiosity, feel the excitement, and want to know more. And he's a really great storyteller in that way.
That is, so I'm curious, something just popped in my head. So we're dealing with a lot of chat GPT in professional services and content. And of course I've been crafting content, handwriting blogs. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I've been doing that for probably 25 years. And chat GPT is pretty good. What do you think about the artisan craft of content creation versus the efficiency of an AI tool, ChatGPT, that can really produce summary-based content? Tell me your thought. I just want to know what you think, Riff.
Well, I mean, look, I think I went to TED this year in Vancouver, and they did a lot. We saw a lot of what AI is capable of and what it will look like in the future.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I definitely see a future where AI is just as good at creating creative content as Charles Kuralt was at telling stories, or I am at writing, or even you, Jason.
Yeah.
So I'll be totally honest with you. Here, I'll cut to my honesty camera. I was really depressed.
I get it
TED because I thought, if I'm supposed to be a great writer, and if ChatGPT can do it better, faster, what am I going to do, right?
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Large language models are basically kind of good at doing four things, right? Like they're good at understanding the words before and after. They're good at kind of predicting the words before and after. They're good at understanding the query and then regurgitating some information.
Yeah.
But here's what they're really good at, and this is the fourth thing, and probably the most important thing. It's really good at imitating or mimicking the way other people do things.
Yeah.
So it's really good at constructing a joke using somebody else's joke to figure out how you could make a joke about a different subject, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty creative. And I think the real thing we need to talk about with AI, this is a hot button issue for me, by the way.
Oh, no, this is big for everybody. This is huge.
Yeah. I think we need to be really thinking about that fourth point. It's really good at imitating someone, and the style we write, the way we talk, the video, it's very good at imitating and deceiving us. And I think there's a big moment in the next 6 months coming where a big brand is going to accidentally use AI unintentionally to deceive consumers, and the perception will be they were deceived. And it's a really powerful vehicle for destroying trust with your most loyal customers and clients. So I've been working on a framework to help people understand what to use AI for and how to use it in the right way. Because I think that's the biggest liability. It's destroying trust.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. In LLM, large language models, that's kind of the data set that an AI tool pulls
Yes.
from, and then with your engineering prompts, it produces it from these large language models. And I think Sam Altman was in front of the Senate recently, right, talking about, well, we've done a lot of what we can do, right? We're not going to be able to push it much further, much as fast as it has been, because the speed so far is what's freaking us out, right? That is really freaky and depressing for people like me and you who really just love content creation and just, have devoted our life to it. So I don't know, maybe some of the innovation will slow down a little bit so we can keep up. But I think I'm with you.
So.
You don't think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think it's going so fast.
Yeah.
Like it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like, have you tried to take some of your blog posts, Jason, and cut and paste them in and then say, write a new blog post based on the blog post, the style?
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, it's
really
real
good at emulating.
Yeah. It's real good.
Yeah.
And I can, we can go to, our team can have a Loom with you going over tax return, pull the transcript, put it in ChatGPT and say, put the top 7, summary points for Andrew and Liz and send it to them. Isn't that
crazy?
And it's so good. Now, so we're not doing that in our firm because, Julie and I, we're kind of old school lovers of this handcrafted content. I don't know. So we're going to have to adapt to that. So we got off on ChatGPT, but it's cool because you come from a specific, focus and care about content, and that's the things we care about. And I guess that's what you do as a professional speaker, right? I mean, it's you craft your own content. So this is a trip. Monumental Shift is your business, and you are a professional public speaker. That's what you do. And I want to know, what is that? What the heck is that business model? Like, what do you do all day?
Well, I mean, the essence of the business, it's like the most referral-based business you can think of, because when you have what I call a referable speech, a speech that people see somewhere and then want to invite you to speak at their event and give the same speech, the whole goal is that it just, rolls along and you're constantly getting new referrals. So, the key to the business is really keeping a speech out there that is so good people want to buy it. And that's been my business for the last 10 years. The first year I did the business, I didn't have a referable speech, and I was just tailoring my message for every session. And, it was a rough year. I think, I think I probably did 40 events and made less than $100,000. And that's when I started saying, all right, like, there must be a better method. So the job is literally, building a great experience for the event organizers we work for, and hoping you deliver on stage so that people get up afterwards and say, oh my gosh, I want you to come speak at our event. And that's it.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot more than that. But the thing is, so it's the business model is creating a referable speech. So there is a product, right? There's a kind of like in our business.
The speech is the product.
The speech is 100%. The product, but the speech can't be the product without Andrew, and that's the thing. And so what kind of scalability do you have around that? And, where have
None.
It is travel to an event and deliver it, which a lot of people think is super cool. They would love to do this work for a living. What would you say to people who would love to be able to do what you do for a living?
I would say, look, like, full disclosure, like, my wife Elizabeth and I, we don't have any kids, so for us, travel is a really easy option. We don't have to worry about school or pickup or any of that stuff. So, like, the more freedom you have, the better the option. And yes, I have been able to see the world, but on the other side, it is exhausting. The travel can be exhausting. Sometimes I'm on the road 200 days a year. And that's a lot of nights on the road.
Wow.
It can be overwhelming. If you're an introvert and you don't like going to cocktail hours and shaking hands and signing books and meeting people at booths all day long, it's probably not the kind of thing you would really enjoy. But if you like, my goal is to transform the way my audience feels and the things they do after they see me speak. So for me, the gratification doesn't actually necessarily come by getting a round of applause when I leave the stage or people saying great speech on the elevator. It really comes 3 weeks later when I get an email from someone who saw a speech and it's transformed the way they're working. It's transformed the way they're marketing. I just got one recently from someone who saw a speech. They emailed me and said, "Can I have a copy of one of your graphics?" I said, "Sure." I sent it to them. And then a few weeks later, they said, "Check it out. We rebranded our conference room, the name of the speech, which is called the Cube of Creativity.
No way.
And we have your framework on there." Yeah, it's the coolest thing.
That is so cool.
That's when I know I'm making an impact, and that's really why I do it. I mean,
that's cool.
I don't do it because I like to speak. I do it because I want to change the world. And I think if you're motivated by the right things, a referable speech becomes easier, the business becomes easier, and you're feeling rewarded.
Okay.
I don't know, Jason.
That's
I had
cool.
a mentor years ago who told me a great job is fun, challenging, and rewarding.
Fun, challenge. That's cool.
You know, every job I've ever had, he's been right. Like if I felt like the job was getting, to be a drain and it wasn't fun anymore, I knew it was time to leave. If I wasn't feeling challenged, the speaking business, if you're doing the same speech every year for 10 years, that's not challenging anymore. So I challenge myself to come up with a new speech every year. And that I find very challenging. And yes, it's rewarding financially. Sure, it's rewarding, but also it's really rewarding to get that kind of feedback.
That is so cool. That is so cool. I love just it's important in any business, right, to have a purpose behind why that business exists. And I think for Julie and I, we love our firm. We are entrepreneurial care organizations. Sometimes we tell people that we're for creative entrepreneurs who really are disorganized. They struggle. They don't know the financial piece. And we're like, we want to bring order to your life because what you do is so valuable. You change people's lives. So we want to care for entrepreneurs. So that's our purpose. And so it can push you through a lot of the down moments. So that's wild. That's what you've done. I would have thought you love to give speeches. I would have thought that's your purpose. Andrew loves to give speeches. Now, you got to be good at it. You enjoy it, but there's another purpose. It's people actually they gain insights that then change them to live and behave differently, I guess is what they're doing.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Yeah. I mean, I've done, because I do a new speech every year, I've had speeches that people say that was fun, it was informative, I learned something. But if I'm not getting the emails that say, oh my gosh, it's been 3 weeks and look, I generated $100,000 in revenue just by taking the ideas you gave and applying them, I know it's not a great speech. I just know it's not going to last.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, so you've got in your tool chest some speeches, right? Do people go, do they come to you and go, I want this speech, or do they say, I want you, just do whatever speech you want? Oh, how does the business work? What are you selling?
It works because the speech is the product. Yeah. Usually people are asking for a specific speech. So let's see, for example, where was I last? I was in Las Vegas for a financial advisors event. Okay. And the organizer had seen me speak elsewhere, and they said, oh my gosh, that speech, it's called the Loyalty Loop. We would love to have that speech for financial advisors. Can you do that speech? I was like, yeah, that I can definitely do that. Now, some events have hired me a couple years in a row, and they'll say, they'll hire me because they saw a speech elsewhere, and they're like, we want that speech at our event. Yeah. But then they'll say, that was so great. What do you have next? And then it's just like marketing a product. I need a cross-sell or an upsell. I see. Okay. For the next round. So generally, because I've got a new speech every year, it's like I'm usually booking speeches from 3 or 5 years ago still today. So the Loyalty Loop is a speech that's 5 years old, and it's still my most preferred speech. So this year I'll give the Loyalty Loop speech more than any of the other speeches. But I know that the speech I just gave this year for the first time in 5 years will replace the Loyalty Loop. So you kind of have to have a constant new speech going.
That's cool. And then when you give this new speech you created, right, the first few times, you feel your way through it, right? You're probably really skilled at it now, obviously, to just, how to roll into a brand new speech, but then when you do it over and over, you just throw in your little nuances and your tweaks. I imagine you get better and better at your speeches as you deliver the ones you've created, right?
I'm pretty meticulous. Like I really do treat it like a job. So, I videotape every speech I've ever given, I videotape. So I try the next day within 24 hours to watch the entire speech through, and I take notes like what worked, what's lagging. Sometimes
so
I just
cool.
videotape the audience. So I can see when there's always a guy who's like falling asleep, and I watch when he's falling asleep, and I try to figure out why I might be losing them there. So it's like game day footage if you're a professional athlete. You watch yesterday's
That's
game,
a trip.
figure out what went wrong, and you try to tweak it. So it takes about a year to come up with a new speech, and it takes about a year of tweaking before it's very referable, meaning that most times I give it, I'm getting stage side leads, 3 or 4 from every speech.
That is cool.
And yeah, you're right. It's that iterative process.
Yeah. Now, when you say you're videotaping yourself and the audience, you fly into an event. Do you set up just some quick cameras that's yours?
Yeah. I set up like a little DJI Osmo that it's like a pocket camera that just shoots a wide angle of the stage. And then I have a little GoPro that I use that shoots the audience. And then I just watch it when I'm done and say, you know what, that from minute 7 to minute 8, like that just bombed. I need to rewrite that and rehearse it so that I can do it better next time.
That's a trip, Andrew. I never would have thought. It makes total sense. Game day footage for a professional athlete is them just trying to get better at their craft. And all of us are delivering our craft every day, and that's what you're doing. And you treat your speeches that way. That is now. Would you say? And let me just say, I see a lot of LinkedIn bios with keynote speaker in there, and I'm like, I'm always going, I don't think so. I'm looking at their experience. I'm like, no, I don't think you are. But everybody puts that in their bio. But however, people are not treating their keynote speaking business, which they don't have, the way you do. What do you think about everybody wanting to be a keynote speaker? It drives me crazy.
I don't mind it as much.
Okay.
I mean, I see the same thing though. I see some even a friend of mine, all of a sudden, I'll check their LinkedIn bio, and I know them very well, and now all of a sudden they're saying they're a keynote speaker, and I'm like, I didn't know that.
Yeah. All of a sudden, overnight.
I get it. Yeah. I kind of categorize all speakers into 3 tiers. There's like aspiring amateurs, which I think a lot of those people who put keynote speaker just add it to their profile in the hopes that they might get a keynote speech or a speech invitation.
Yeah.
I feel like they're aspiring amateurs. They probably are running a business, and they're going to use speaking to help promote their business or inspire people to hire them for something. Yeah. And I don't think there's anything wrong with any of these categories. Then there's a middle tier, which I call the semi-professional, which is it's like if you have a consulting business and 70 or 80% of your business comes from consulting clients, and there's like 20 or 30 or 10% more that comes from doing a few keynote speeches a year for small money, right? And a lot of those people have a speaker website and a reel, and they're pretty good. Like they're doing a great job out there.
Yeah.
And so that's one type that also will say keynote speaker.
Yeah.
And then there's a small percentage that I think that I consider professional keynote speakers, where 100% or 90% of the revenue comes from speaking, and 10% comes from books or consulting or some other thing.
Okay.
And so, whenever I see keynote speaker, I try to dive in and I try to classify them. Are they an aspiring amateur? Are they really a professional? And I learn a lot just by kind of looking at them through that lens.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I guess I'm I probably do 3 to 4 speeches, live ones every year. But, some of them are with a conference center that some paid, some not even paid, and so for me, it's just part of, the firm and the consultancy work that we do. Yeah. But I don't know, if it's things I'm getting better at, because I'm certainly not videoing myself, which sounds horrifying to video myself and watch it. That must be awful for you to have to watch that and just cringe.
Oh yeah, here's another secret. It never gets easier. Like I thought, after a year of watching myself, I'm gonna be fine. No, I hate it. It's always painful. Always. Like sometimes I have a visceral reaction, like a physical reaction. I start to tear up. And it's not I'm not sad. It's just like, I'm like, oh God. Yes, it's miserable watching yourself. I can't stand it.
Or maybe during the speech, you're like, I mean, you have to keep going, right? But maybe there's, 7 minutes in, you kind of screwed up a transition, and
definitely.
and you're like, I don't want to see that, man. I'm going to really cringe when I watch that again. But
I just did that recently, and what was really sad is when I was on stage, the first thing I thought was, oh no, I messed up. I got to fix that. The second thing I thought was, I'm going to have to watch me screw this up tomorrow. Like that was
while you're speaking,
while I'm
right?
speaking. Yeah.
Right.
It's terrible.
That's so crazy.
I try, look, I think speaking of any kind is such a great skill. I just think most people underestimate the effort you can put into it to make it just a little better than most speeches you've ever seen.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take being like me, like game day footage every day, but rehearsing more and like treating it as a real professional experience. Like you're going to really, really treat it as a real opportunity. I think more people would have a bigger impact and also learn a lot more.
Yeah. Well, so do you think like Tony Robbins or Gary Vee? So these are keynote speakers, right? And of course they have consultancies and stuff. Are they watching their own game day footage? I don't. Or are they just like
Tony Robbins is pretty meticulous.
Okay.
I know he crafts his events very, very highly, and I would not be surprised if Tony Robbins watches his own stuff and takes some notes and tries better next time.
Okay.
I know Gary Vee. Gary and I have known each other for a long time, although I haven't actually talked to him in probably a year. But he has a very different speaking style.
Yes.
There's a difference. I think people look at speakers like Gary Vee or Tony Robbins and they say, oh, I can just get up there and do what Gary does or what Tony does.
Yeah, no.
And there's a difference. Look, like you can, when event organizers, any event organizer, doesn't matter what, they look at like actors and athletes and A-listers like Tony Robbins and Gary Vee as just a name on the bill that's going to fill some seats, and they always deliver, right? Doesn't matter because they're a big name.
Right.
And I consider what I do and what most professional speakers do that aren't the big name celebrities, we consider them surprise and delight speakers. So most people don't know my name on an agenda, and they're like, I don't know, am I going to go to the 10 o'clock keynote? I guess I'll go. The topic looks interesting.
Yeah.
But my goal is that within the first 5 minutes, they're like, holy smokes, who is this guy? And they're looking me up on the agenda. And they're like, I'm really learning a lot. This is fantastic. And by the end, I'm hoping they're saying, I'm so glad I went to this. This made the whole event worth it.
Okay. And that's
how my business works.
Okay. And that's just the business model you have, right? It's the one you've got to work with. And
exactly.
Yeah. And people see Gary Vee and they're like, oh yeah, I mean, maybe I could do that. And it's like, no, he may not have had to practice. He just has a different level of charisma and experience and and a don't give a crap attitude, right? So that's so part of, but that's his shtick, right? That's his thing. You're going to get cussed out by Gary Vee, when you go to his event, and that's fine, long as you know what you're getting into. It's just really cool. Yeah. Well, I want to talk about so going into the pandemic. Obviously, if you have a professional speaking business, what did the pandemic do, and then to you and to your speaking business, and then and you know what, I would say you're not a person who just deals with what they're given. You pivot, you change, you grow, which is really cool. That's hard to do sometimes. You pivoted like crazy into virtual. So tell me how it hit you, and then what you did as a response. Yeah,
well, so I mean, the short version is, I'll just say right off the bat, I actually think building a business is like a quest. It's like you have a destination in mind. You want to get up the mountain. You want to see the view, but along the way there are villains and twists and turns where you get off your path, and then sometimes you realize I don't even want to get to the mountain anymore. Somebody told me I want to get to the village.
Nice.
And so you kind of take a different direction, and that's how I felt like the pandemic was for me. Essentially, within about 15 days, every event that I had booked, I had 60 events booked for that year, for the following 12 months. Every single one of them had postponed or canceled, outright canceled. And the ones who had postponed were thinking we'd probably go virtual, and as the year turned into 2 years, they would prove to be right. Almost everything went virtual. So I I think in the first year from the moment the pandemic started and the lockdown started, I did 90 virtual events, and I knew I was going to have to do something different.
Wow.
And my television background, by the way, Jason, finally came into
nice.
to big use because, I realized, here's the thing with virtual events. Every virtual platform that we've ever go on, if you try to share your PowerPoint in Zoom, for example, it puts up the slides big and you're small, right?
Yeah.
And I know from my television experience that video is such a cold medium. You need to be big and the slides need to be small. So I basically built this little studio here. Actually, I have it here. I have another camera. I can show the audience that's watching on video.
Yeah,
let me just widen that
this
out.
will be on YouTube. I want to see some of your tips and tricks here.
Oh, oops, this one.
Okay,
there we go. This is what I'm using here. This is my
nice,
my little setup.
Dude, that's a setup, man. That's a setup.
It's a setup.
So you got three cameras. You got 3 cameras now.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
I have 4 cameras because I also have this one, a document cam. So like I do a lot of live drawing. So like, hey, let's talk about AI. Let me show you the AI decision matrix, and we'll draw it here, and you guys will get the whole point. It's like that. And then I sign it. Like that.
I love it. You sign it. That's so cool.
Yeah. And then I also realized from television that it needs to be fast paced. So, I have lots of cool graphics. Like we do these hot seat segments. Well, I'll take someone from Zoom and we bring them in and we do some like role playing or something. So I'll say, hey, Jason, welcome to the hot seat. Oh, there we go.
Hot seats. Yeah. Hot seats. Yeah.
Now, see, we've brought people out of a Zoom breakout, and we don't have any graphics to reintroduce people back to the group. We're just like, hey, everybody, thanks for coming back. You didn't disappear. And then you have some applause. Well, can you give us applause?
Oh, yeah. We have applause. Thank you very much, Jason, for sitting in the hot seat. And then I have the horn. Like, this has been so much fun. The hockey horn. I mean, the whole point was you got to really make it more interactive. So it's been really fun doing it, and surprisingly enough, just from a revenue standpoint, when I first started doing virtual events, even before the pandemic, they were low fee. Yeah. Basically like a 10% of what I would get for an in-person experience. Yeah. And during the pandemic, the demand got so high for good virtual events that I could charge essentially 100% of my in-person fee for a virtual event, which was pretty exciting.
Oh man, it's because they don't pay your travel typically if you go to a site, right?
Yeah, no, I have what I call Happy Meal pricing. So I just include everything in the entire fee.
Happy Meal, that's good. Okay,
including the toy.
Okay, include the toy. Which, man, you've got all kind of toys. So, well, this is cool. Yes. Okay, so we're wrapping up. I'm learning a lot. Yeah. What I'm learning a lot about is really the purpose in our work. How to be engaging, how to be fun, how to pivot, how to make yourself better. So, what's some of your as we're headed out? What's some of your advice for people who are younger? Not that you're not younger, Andrew, but they haven't been doing this as long as you, and they're ready to get into it. And you've run a lot of businesses. You've pushed your way into the Muppets. I say pushed your way. You've kind of done a lot of things that have been. What is your advice to entrepreneurs that are just starting out? How do you do that?
My advice is always 3 steps for me. So like the first step is always investigate. Like I'm a big researcher and I like to dive deep. But part of the problem with people who like to do research on anything, you want to be a keynote speaker, you want to start an agency, you want to meet Warren Buffett, you want to work for the Muppets. Yeah. Like the key is to learn as much about the business as you can from your perspective and start to form some hypotheses. The second thing though, this is the key, because you can just go down an investigation rabbit hole and say, I never feel like I know enough. Yeah. The key is for every new thing you learn, you need to be able to aerate that idea with someone. That could be posted on Twitter or posted on Instagram.
Yeah.
Post what you're learning on a blog post or a video or a TikTok or YouTube. I don't care.
Right.
But share the journey along the way. And then the third piece is amplify. And for me, that's amplify what works, what resonates with people, no matter what you're doing. So if you're starting an agency and you're trying to sell strategy that's not working, but if you sell website design, it is. If that's working, then that's great. Amplify that and go back to the investigation phase. Like, how could I sell strategy with this? Might be a new question. Then aerate what you're learning or ideas you have. Somebody will amplify that and say, and so you're looking for resonance, not reach. You know, part of the problem with social media and a lot of what we create today is how many people read it or clicked it or looked at it. What you're looking for is just a few people saying, wow, that's a genius idea. I'm interested in learning more, or I think you should pursue that. That's the encouragement that I think has always helped me take the next step.
Okay.
And if you just repeat that cycle, you can be really successful at anything.
Nice. Okay. Resonance. That's cool. Resonance, resonating with key people where your message changes them and not necessarily reach, because social media, we are looking for numbers. And numbers don't always really deliver for us what we're hoping, but it's where it resonates, which is harder to track, I guess, right? It's harder to find the numbers related to the resonance.
Yeah. My friend Jay Acunzo is a big proponent of this. I think the key to this, like the resonance stuff from his perspective anyway, and what I've seen is when it resonates, you feel better than just seeing a lot of hearts or likes or views, you know?
Okay.
And I think you learn more too, because when I should be clear, sometimes you get backlash, right? Like if I go on LinkedIn today and say, I think AI has the power to deceive and marketers are going to ruin it for everybody, some people might like it,
right?
But the people who really hate what I say, they're going to launch into me.
Yeah.
And that is still positive reinforcement. It means you're creating something that's got an emotional appeal, and it's encouraging you to go back to the investigate phase and figure out how you can aerate a new perspective given what you've learned.
I love it. Well, cool. Well, Andrew, this is awesome. Can you just, can you say hello to Jenny on our team, because she is your customer ally?
She's the best. Hey, Jenny, I have to wait, this is just an intimate moment between me and Jenny.
Okay.
Jenny, I have to tell you, we've had a lot of accounting help in the last 25 years that I've been in business, and no one has helped us like you. And we mean it from the heart. You guys are the best. You, Jenny, first, and then other people that help you. Thank you,
dude. She's awesome on the Blummer team. So we'll go. Thank you for doing that. Well, Andrew, this has been so fun. I've learned so much, and we're gonna hopefully I can meet you in person one day. I hope.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you when I'm in town for my next gig.
Okay, I love it. All right. Thanks, Andrew, for joining us on the Businessology Show. We'll see you.